This is the corrections video for Alfred's Essentials of Music Theory, Lesson 53. This is just practicing taking 7 chords through their full inversions. A couple of things to bear in mind. This is a D7 chord because the note on the bottom is D. But we are in the key of G. G is the first scale degree, or Do, and D is the 5th scale degree, or So. That's why this is a 5-7 chord, because it starts on the 5th scale degree, starts on the 5th scale degree of this scale right here. All right, so they give it to us in root position. It is our job to draw it in first inversion by taking D from the bottom and putting it on the top. So D is going to be up here, and everything else is going to stay exactly where it was. You can see that our interval of a second is up in the first position, making it a first inversion. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our new bottom note, which is F, and move it up an octave. Everything else stays the same as it was in first inversion. Now you can see that our interval of a second is in the middle position, or the second position, making it second inversion, just like this over here. Okay, so root position has thirds all stacked together. First position has thirds, and then on the top it has a second. Second inversion has a third with a second in the middle and another third. And we're about to draw third inversion by taking A up an octave. Everything else stays exactly where it just was. And now with C on the bottom, our interval of a second is in the bottom position, or the third position, just like this. We don't have to add any accidentals because the 5-7 chord starts on the 5th note of the scale and it belongs to the scale. All right, we're going to do the same thing with our A7, which is in the key. So our A7 chord, A, bass clef, in the key of D, because D, E, F sharp, G, A is the 5th note of that scale. And we're just going to take the bottom note up an octave, and everything else stays exactly where it was in root position. Do it again. Take the C up an octave. Everything stays the same as it was in first inversion. Take the E up an octave. Everything else stays where it was in second inversion. Next, we're going to do the same thing with C. This is a C7 chord because C is in the root, but we are in the key of F. F, G, A, B flat, C. C is the 5th note of the F major scale. We're going to take that C up an octave. Everything else stays exactly where it was in root position. Now we're going to take the E up an octave. Everything else stays where it was in first inversion. Take the G up an octave. Oops. And everything else stays where it was in second inversion. Okay, last one of these exercises. We are starting on F, but we are in the key of B flat, C, D, E flat, F. We are in bass clef, so that F is going to move up an octave. Everything else stays where it was in root position. Our new bottom is A. A is going to move up the octave. Everything else stays where it was in first inversion. And lastly, we're going to take the C up an octave. Everything else stays where it was in second inversion. So if we just really quickly, this goes up, and then this goes up, and then this goes up. That's how those inversions work. Okay. Next thing that we need to do is on exercise number 2. It is asking you which inversion each of these chords are in. And so we can just use the where is the second trick. So the notes that are touching are a second apart. These ones are in the first position, the top position, and so they are first inversion. Next, the touching notes are in the second position, so it's second inversion. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight all of our seconds so we can really quickly identify which inversion these are. Seconds are on the bottom, third inversion. Seconds are on the top, first inversion. Seconds are on the bottom, third inversion. Seconds are on the top, first inversion. Seconds are in the middle, second inversion. Okay. And it doesn't ask you to tell what key each of these are being derived from, but I'm going to quickly go through. You don't have to have this written in. A is the fifth note of what scale? Now, there are two ways to think about this. You can either go down a fifth, or you can just go up a tetrachord, because they'll both get you from so, which is this note, to do. You need to go so, fa, mi, re, do, or so, la, ti, do, do, do. They're the same note. They're both do. Okay, so up a tetrachord from A is A up a whole step, B up a whole step, C sharp up a half step, D. So this one is D major. Next one is F up a whole step, G up a whole step, A up a half step, B flat. This is B flat major. Next we have D up a whole step, F sharp, or E up a whole step, F sharp up a half step, G major. Next, we have already seen this, okay, right? Because we have an A chord here and an A chord here. We don't have to figure it out again. This is also based in D major. This is also based in B flat major. And this is also based in G major. Okay, and that's important because as we go into the last exercise down here, we do actually have to know which scale it's based off of, which key signature it's based off of, because we have to add our own accidentals. Okay, so it's giving us the bottom note and telling us which inversion we are in. So it wants a C7 chord in first inversion. So if we were to draw this fully and we were to just put it in root position, we'd have our C, and then we'd have E, which they gave us, G, and B. To make it an inversion, whoops, oh, that was giant. To make it an inversion, we're going to take the C, we're in bass clef, look out. We're going to take the C and move it up an octave. Now, we need to be aware of accidentals. Okay, so C, the root of this chord, C is the fifth note of what scale? Remember, we can either go so, fa, mi, re, do, or we can do so, la, ti, do. I always like to go forward the tetrachord to make sure that I'm getting into the right key signature. So C up a whole step, D up a whole step, E up a half step, F. So we're going to use the key signature from F major and apply it to this chord. The key signature for F major is 1 flat, which is B flat. Big Elephants and Donkeys Go Canoeing Fridays, B flat. So we need to make sure that we add that flat sign there. Okay, let's go through and just establish our key signatures. The next one, A is the fifth note of which scale? We already did this up here. A is the fifth note of D major. D is the fifth note of G major. C is the fifth note of F major. F is the fifth note of B flat major. and D is the fifth note of G major. So now we can add all of our notes in. The second one is telling us that this is the fifth of the chord. So it's second inversion. So we're going to have a third, and then a second, and then a third. And we need to apply the key signature for D major. It takes 2 lines to draw a capital letter D. So this is going to have 2 sharps, which are F sharp and C sharp. There aren't any Fs in this chord because it's A, C, E, and G. So the only one that we have to change is the C, making it a C sharp. Okay, first inversion, which means we have our regular snowman with our seconds up at the very, very top. G major has 1 sharp, which is F sharp. Fat cats go down alleys eating bugs, F sharp. They already gave us the F sharp because it is in the bottom note right here. Okay, next we have C major in third inversion, which means that our seconds, our touching notes, are going to be at the very bottom, and everything else is thirds on top of that. Key of F major is the one that we just have to effing remember. It has 1 flat, which is B flat, and they've already given us to that as our given note. Next, we want an F7 chord, and it tells us that we're in second inversion, so we're going to have a third, and then a second, and then a third, and it's the key of B flat major, so we need to have 2 flats, Big Elephants and Donkeys Go Canoeing Friday, so B flat and E flat. The only one that is present is the E flat. Lastly, a D7 chord, which is going to have D, F, A, and C. This is in third inversion, so there's our D, F, A, and the note that they gave us was C. We can tell that this is third inversion because our seconds are touching like that, and we need to apply the key signature for G major, which is 1 sharp. Fat cats go down alleys eating bugs, 1 sharp, F sharp, right there. Okay, make sure that you have made your corrections and go ahead and submit this to your discussion.